so much for joining me today. Well, on my channel, I want you to know that there is always more than one way to do things. If you don't have the products that I happen to use in the video, trust me, there is always a way. And hopefully, in all of my videos, there are, nearly 900 of them, you see some ways that you have the supplies for, that you have the bits and pieces for, even if you have to invest in a piece or two. I hope that my channel shows you ways which you can go about things and not have to have everything perfect or, everything new that seems to come out. So, starting to begin with option 1 here, I have a circle die cut from Kids Fun Foam. This is a literally cheap and cheerful fun foam. It's best if it's 2 or 3 millimeters thick. The 1 millimeter is just really not thick enough. And instead of using a stamp, a gorgeous stamp, or instead of using masking, some sort of masking paper, we are just going to use some Kids Fun Foam. You could cut this out with your hand if you want. You can use fun foam as a gorgeous stamp. Now, what I will say is if you're inking it up with ink pads, it stamps beautifully. I have so many videos on my channel that show this, but when I'm inking it up with finger daubers, you can see that really before I add water, I don't get too much because A, I'm using residual ink that's on my finger daubers, and B, it's sort of putting the ink one place and then drying it a little bit and then trying to get it to another place. So to combat that, I'm just adding a very light spray of water. This is directly onto my card base. It's not perfect. Then I'm going to add another little light layer of sort of a darker blue ink. I don't know what colors I used here. As I said, I used residual ink from my finger daubers, so I'm just trying to go with the flow. This is just really enjoyable for me. This is an older stamp set. Now I thought I would try something first. I just really like the text, and I'm going to take some Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink, and first of all I thought I would try and stamp it down onto my circle and see if it would transfer, but it's just not quite enough ink. Now the reason I was trying to do this is because I don't have a mask on my actual card base, and so I was trying to make sure it was staying within the circle, but that's okay. It didn't stamp like that. So then option B is to spray it with a little bit of water and see if I can get to, if I re-moisten it a little bit and if that will transfer. It does transfer a little bit. I know it's hard to see, but there is a little bit. And then option C, I want it a little bit more, so I am just going to risk putting it straight on. And it's not too bad. I just use my fingers to kind of curve it where I want the stamp to stamp, and it just gives a little bit of light background noise going in the back there. And then I add a little bit more down the bottom, so it's sort of almost the whole thing. And then from here, I decided I just want some splatters all over the card. We need something to fill all of that white space, but I don't want to fill it with, actual things. So the go-to is a little bit of splatter. I believe this was Salty Ocean. I mean, I used blues in the circle, so I'm roughly going with that. But you can see that just using a piece of Kids Fun Foam and some inks, of course. Now, time to fill it in. I have this stamp here. This is obviously from Magenta. This is old. I have no idea if this is still on the market. I don't even know the name of the stamp. I googled it and I can see that Magenta Stamps is still going, so that's brilliant. But this was one of the first ever stamps I bought. So it has these two gorgeous, what look like to me daisies maybe, and so I'm going to stamp these out. I do want another one though, so what I'm going to do, I'm sort of picturing how it's going to go in my head. I partially inked up just that one daisy and then stamped it down, and it looks pretty good. It fills up the circle a little more, it sort of fills the page a little bit more, and yeah, I was happy with that. Now, speaking of being happy, I have these little stamp sets here. This one is the Happy Sentiments from Wow, obviously. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I'm just going to stamp this down the side. Really, any sentiment is going to work with these cards. These are very quick and simple, but these are the cards that I often enjoy, especially when I don't have a whole lot of time to get out lots and lots of products or bits and pieces, and I just want to spend a little bit of happy time crafting. Then these cards are kind of my go-to. Now, there's obviously a few things that I can do to finish off this card, and one of them is going to be to add some little water droplet gems. These are my absolute go-to, and mainly because I like to say I'm efficient, but it's sort of lazy. It means I don't have to do any color coordinating because they just go with everything. Every color, no matter what you've used on the page, you do not have to think about it. I don't have to store a million gems. So these are my go-to. There are, I think, 5 different sizes in this bottle, going down to absolutely tiny. Then, of course, I can't help myself. I love the squiggly frame at the moment. I know you're seeing it a lot. 2 little lines going down each side. Just freehand them. They're meant to be messy. They're meant to look like this. It almost looks like a stamp, and I think it just really finishes it off. I do a couple of little stitching squiggles, maybe some dots if you want to, but there is my first card, done and dusted. Pretty simple, some hand-drawn elements, some kids' fun foam to use for our stamp, and then option B, we are going to go with a little bit more. So these are the A2 Arches. This is just a stacking die set, and for me, I do recommend stacking die sets. I think they are a great investment. However, this shape is probably something you would get maybe further down the track. I would recommend something like circles, squares, rectangles, maybe even love hearts, if that's your thing, but I've got to the stage where I would love to use these, to try these out and to challenge myself a little bit. I'm going to be using some Gina K masking paper because this is the only masking paper I truly love when it comes to adding lots of ink and water and all sorts, and I know there is going to be no bleed through. It's just so frustrating when you think you've masked something off and then you get bleed through, or you get sort of bleeding underneath the masking paper. It's just so frustrating, and so this one is fantastic, and I'm sure there are others out there on the market. This is just the one that I found works best for me, absolutely. So now what I did was I cut the panel to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 to begin with. That way I knew I could roughly center it on my card, and then I take off the release paper. Everything's centered, everything's ready to go. Now this one I'm doing essentially the same thing as before. We're just using a different way to go about it. Before we used sort of a stamp to make the color. This time we're going to use a mask to add the color into a specific space. And this one, I'm just, as I said, using residual ink. If I can get away with it, this is something that I do very often. It means I don't have to get any ink pads out at all. This is also a stencil that I am loving at the moment. This is the Tim Holtz Brush Hex, and it's just the perfect amount of background noise. I'm just coming in with a really light layer, remembering that we are creating a background, not something to be in the foreground. So my blending doesn't matter. We are going to have a little focal point that's going to go over top, so don't worry there. So some really light blending. I'm taking this woodware stamp again. This is called Text Background. I believe it's still available. I'm sure it is. As usual, if I can find things, they will be linked down below if you would like to check them out. That also helps me out a whole lot as well. But then I have this stencil again. I know I've been using this one heaps, but I love the swirls and I love the music notes. I also love them used together. Now this is a bit of hickory smoke ink here, just for a bit of background. I'm using both the notes and the swirls, just little pieces of them, sort of partial pieces, not the whole element. And I know that it's a little bit hard to see on camera everything, but it does all add up there. Now we have the Leafy dies from Pink and Main. I know you've seen all of these elements time and time again, but that is how we get good value for money out of our investments. We use them over and over and over again because craft supplies are not necessarily cheap. So we want to be able to find as many ways as possible, and I want to show you as many ways as possible. In case you invest in something that you've seen on my channel, I want to show you the most amount of ways possible that I can use it, or I can think to use it. So that goes along with this, I think it's called the Toast Collection from 49 and Market. I'm loving this at the moment. It's definitely sort of throwing my brain into gear around, different things I can do with it. Now, this die set is like you can have them separately, obviously, beautiful, but they also layer up beautifully together. So I have cut the base layer out of a map. Then I am using these Sizzix adhesive sheets. Now, this was before this gorgeous, lovely, lovely person sent me a bulk pack of these stick it adhesive sheets, which I have not been able to get my hands on. So I won't mention her name, because I have not asked her permission if she is happy for it to be out there. But what an amazing, amazing thing to think of. I cannot believe it. They came all the way from Scotland, and she sent them over because she saw that I was completely out. I couldn't get hold of them over here in New Zealand at all, and she sent me a parcel of them, like a package, a bulk package. So thank you so much. Now, this one here, I'm going to use the thank you. Now, these little sentiments are just my kind of thing, because smaller sentiment packets usually mean a cheaper price point, which is something I'm keen on. So if I think I can use all of the sentiments in a pack, then that becomes useful to me, especially if it's a smaller sentiment and therefore hopefully cheaper. So I have taken off my mask. Look at the reveal, the crisp white. Both of these were done straight onto the card base, may I just say. I think I forgot to say that, but straight onto the card base. So we're not even using another layer. And you can sort of see all those gorgeous layers that we built up there on the background. I'm using some matte medium. You can see this gorgeous little focal point that we created, putting some gold cardstock over top of the map, and this is just going to kind of curve nicely into that arch. Now I just love this. The background is gorgeous. The little simple focal point was fun to create, really easy, and then we have a gorgeous little sentiment that is going to go on the side. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you were inspired by it. I hope that you can look at your craft supplies and see that there is definitely a way to make things work. Sometimes we just have to think outside of the box, and I hope that these videos, my videos or my channel in general, have helped you do that. But let me know which one of the two cards is your favorite. I think I'm leaning towards the gold and the map. I really love that, but I do love the simplicity of the first one. So let me know in the comment section down below which one you go towards, or any other ways that we can go about creating this sort of look of a card. So I will leave links down below. As I said, I will also leave a link to the Buy Me a Coffee in case you'd like to support my channel. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!